Considering that I'm often unable to keep track of my keys, and its tens of thousands of years of galactic history, it's understandable that sometimes a Star Wars faction will misplace massive amounts of weaponry. With the speculation about what the giant Imperial Star Destroyer stockpile and the rise of Skywalker trailers may be about, and with the podcast I do with Eckhart's Ladder, Tapcaf Transmissions, covering Dark Force Rising this upcoming week, I thought it would be a good time to look at three of the largest lost fleets in Star Wars history. The last of these three involves a bit of my own theory crafting and speculation, so I'd love to hear whether you agree with my conclusions in the comments. First, and probably most famously, we have the Katana Fleet, famously introduced in the Thrawn trilogy. The Katana Fleet was a fleet of 200 dreadnought heavy cruisers, led by its flagship Katana. The exact timeline for its introduction is a bit fuzzy. The New Essential Chronology gives the specific year of 46 BBY, or before the Battle of Yavin, for its creation, but within the Thrawn trilogy, Talon Karrde and Gilad Pellaeon hint at dates that are a bit later, although this somewhat ties into the lack of clarity early Star Wars had about the Clone Wars and surrounding time periods. Talon Karrde, when describing the fleet during the Thrawn campaign 9 years after Yavin, noted that the entire ships had been redesigned aesthetically for the fleet, including the use of darker grey hull materials than normal, leading to the nickname the Dark Force. Normally, dreadnoughts would require upwards of 16,000 people in their crews, but with the Katana fleet that was reduced to about 2,000. This was accomplished through significant amounts of automation and using the fleet as a testbed for slave rigging, where orders could be given and carried out centrally. The Republic essentially planned to use the fleet as a proof of concept for this. Unfortunately, one of the crews was infected with a hive virus that quickly spread to the entire crew of the fleet before causing any symptoms, which included inducing insanity before killing them. While under the influence of the virus, the Katana fleet's command crew activated the slave rigging of the ships and jumped to hyperspace, leaving no record of where they had gone and never turning up again. The entire crew was wiped out by the virus, which the Republic later learned had been orchestrated by a bioterrorist named Zeta Magnus. The fleet remained dormant and lost for decades, with many believing the fleet had simply been a legend, although it remained the envy of groups like the Rebel Alliance, who were hard-pressed for effective ships to use in their fight against the Galactic Empire. 6 years before Yavin, future smuggler kingpin Talon Karrde was part of a crew under Captain Hoffner, another smuggler, and they accidentally stumbled upon the fleet, each believing the other was unaware of what they had found. Rebel cell leader Garm Bel Iblis bought 6 of the vessels off of Hoffner, which he used in his private force, nicknamed Peregrines Nest. This information, held by Hoffner and Karrde, became key to the hunt for the ships in the Thrawn campaign, where they were seen as crucial in determining the balance of power. Thrawn ultimately reached them before the New Republic, and despite a battle at the site where they had rested for half a century, he managed to capture the vast majority of the remaining fleet for use in his war against the New Republic. Second, we have probably the largest and most powerful force the galaxy lost, but also one of the most scattered, the Pious Taya Republic fleet. The Pious Taya was an anti-alien humanocentric cult that had emerged in the Republic around 11,987 years before the Battle of Yavin. Under Chancellor Contispex I, they ascended to power executing crusades against alien species, especially the Hutts. This was done primarily using fleets of massive cathedral ships reminiscent of the Warhammer 40k's Imperium. I did another video going into more detail on the Pious Taya themselves, which I'll put in the cards that come up in the top corner. Over 1,000 years later, in 10,966, an alliance of Jedi, so-called heretics, and aliens finally succeeded in defeating the Pious Taya government. The Bureau of Ships and Services, which had sided with the anti-Pious Taya coalition, seeded the navicomputers of the cathedral ships with random destinations and shut down any capability of overriding them, deleting all other possible destinations from their memory banks. The vast majority of the Pious Taya fleet went into hyperspace, never to return. While the Katana fleet was kept together through its slave rigging and eventually recovered and put back into service, the remnants of the Pious Taya's fleet of Citadel ships are still scattered throughout the galaxy, just waiting for some random group to claim them. The crews were able to keep alive the Pious Taya faith within the ships for a few generations, but ultimately those crews did die out. The final fleet we're going to talk about today is the one that involves a significant amount of inferences on my part. So again, part of this is my opinion, and I'd like to hear what you think about my take on this, whether it's likely or not. The Rakatan Infinite Empire is one of the oldest factions to assert themselves as a main galactic power, having conquered and enslaved much of the known galaxy by 30,000 years before Yavin, and ultimately collapsing around 5,200 years later, soon before the rise of the Republic. The Rakata were primarily notable for their creation of massive structures like the Starforge, and heavy use of the dark side of the Force in their technology. The new essential chronology attributes their collapse primarily to a plague which wiped out large parts of the population. And while the plague was weakening the Rakatans, their various slave species began to rise up against them, leading to a massive war. The final nail in their infinite coffin came when the plague mutated and stripped them of their abilities to use the Force, rendering much of the Rakatan technology useless. Rakatan civilization would survive in a more violent, isolated form in a few places, like their former capital Lehon until the destruction of the Starforge. The Unknown Regions campaign guide by Wizards of the Coast also speaks about other planets within what's known as the Rakatan Archipelago, including worlds like Fitomp and Makatak, where Rakata remain and hope to re-establish not just their Force connection, but their galactic dominance. Considering so much of the Rakatans' decline had to do with the plague killing much of their population off, and severing their connection to the Force, which powered much of their technology, my hypothesis is that large fleets of the Rakatan ships likely ended up in a similar situation to the Pious Taya and Katana fleets. With such a large galaxy-spanning civilization taken down by disease that could also shut down their ability to use their technology, it seems likely that in addition to a few ships they may have been able to hold on to, there are probably large pockets of empty Rakatan vessels, their crews having been wiped out and the ships abandoned and unrecoverable. Again, this is my interpretation, so let me know if you agree or disagree with that. Do you think there are large amounts of Rakatan ships unclaimed in the galaxy, or were they all home and destroyed? In either case, that's going to do it for today's video, so I hope you've enjoyed this look at the lost fleets of Star Wars. If you have any suggestions for future videos or any speculation about what the Rise of Skywalker fleets are going to be about, please leave them in the comments, and remember to leave a like or subscribe. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you next time.